This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Amen. Imagine with me then that we live in the year 80 A.D. in a medium-sized city in Syria, which is part of the Roman Empire. We are part of a brand new community, a church community, recently having become followers of Jesus. There might only be 30 or 40 of us, and many of us come out of a Jewish background. We have been captivated by the Spirit and the teachings of Jesus. Our lives have been changed. We have put aside all hostility and enmity. We have put aside our lust for material possessions, and we have become generous with our care and our resources with one another in the church. We are totally committed to following Jesus' pathway, but we are facing some serious repercussions. We can't meet openly because there are so many people around us who are against us. Our old friends in the synagogue are very upset that we have left them chasing after this new religion. The government is suspicious of us because we set at our highest allegiance Jesus instead of the emperor. Some people think that we are devil worshippers. They spread rumors about what goes on in our time of worship. And even families are divided over this church. Fathers and sons are in disagreement. Mothers and daughters are at odds. But yet we are still trying to be the church. So we gather under the cover of darkness. We speak to one another in whispers. We wonder if very soon we might face persecution, violence, or even death. We're also struggling to understand the faith. We don't have very many resources or study guides. We have received some letters from trusted leaders, but we have so many questions that bring about complicated and complex answers. We have been visited several times by missionaries who tell us what they think is the way and the truth, but some of those missionaries contradict each other. We're having difficulty knowing who to believe and what to believe. But today, we heard a sermon. It was given by a man named Matthew. He seemed to understand where we were and what was going on with us, all of our struggles. He seemed to care enough to talk about our confusion. He made an effort to lift us up instead of dragging us down. He gave us courage and hope. He reminded us that we are not in the league with the devil. We are not creating or celebrating evil. We are practicing a religion of love and compassion. He told us the words of Jesus, who promised that even though we are together under the cover of darkness, that day will come when it would be uncovered. All the secrets we share will someday be told. What we do in the dark will come to light, and what we say in whispers will be shouted from the rooftops. Yes, things around us are dangerous. There are malicious minds working around us. But Matthew reminded us that we are valued, according to Jesus, extremely honored. And most importantly, Jesus said to us, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid of those who can do you bodily harm. Be faithful to the end. And now let us fast forward 2,000 years. Here we are in a small community up here in northern Michigan. But we live in a completely different world. We are not surrounded by enemies. We're not looked upon with suspicion. No longer do we have to meet in secret. No longer are we harassed by hostile forces around us. We live in a society where we are free to worship as we want and demonstrate our faith. We are like an open book. Anyone can see. No secrets. We don't have to whisper to each other. We can shout it from the rooftops. We can proclaim openly what we believe. Our problem is not a hostile society around us. Our problem is an apathetic society around us. But we still struggle with matters of the faith. We have questions and confusions. We struggle to understand what to believe and who to believe. We still have layers of fear that keep us from saying things that we want to say and doing the things that we want to do. We need to hear Jesus' words again and again. Do not be afraid. Well, maybe we do have some secrets. Maybe we sometimes whisper about our faith instead of shout. When we are hesitant to stand up for what is right, maybe we try to cover up what we truly believe. Now, when we come to St. Philip's on Sunday morning, we get here about 9:30 and park out here in the parking lot to the north. When I get out of the car, I immediately notice that along the property line is a row of pine trees. And what's on the other side of that pine tree? Well, it's the Crystal Lake Golf Course. And I see, usually as you do, golf carts out there. When I get out of the car, sometimes I'm tempted to walk through those pine trees, go up to those golf carts and say, hey folks, you can finish this hole and probably one more and still make it to church by 10 o'clock. See you there. But I don't do that. Because, well, it would make me look foolish. We could take some lessons from those folks way back when they were courageous enough to withstand the hostilities around them, when even some of them had to give up on wholesome family relationships to be a part of the church community, when they were willing to sacrifice their own needs for the needs of others. Somehow in the midst of all, they were able to let go of their fear. We would do well to remember their faith. May we always remember that the words of Jesus, who reminds us that we are honored and valuable, that God, our Creator, has given us a name and knows us through and through. We are loved, we are treasured, and always will be. And so, we as a congregation continue in this time of transition, a time of discernment. The biggest problem we have, I think, is that we don't know when this transition will end. If we had an end date, it would make it a lot better. We could count the days, but we don't. Meanwhile, we still have to elevate our allegiance to Jesus as our first priority, to do our best to proclaim his lordship in the world. We must look out for the well-being of our neighbors. To make matters worse, we live in a turbulent time in our country. We are all aware of that. The news reports, the social media fill us with words of conflict, division, accusations, corruption, violence. Sometimes it's hard for us to determine exactly what the truth is. We also have different opinions about what we think the problems are and what we think the solutions might be. This time, it is vitally important that we elevate our faith and our commitment to be followers of Jesus, seeking love, peace, reconciliation, and justice. Let us remember that we are called to be reconcilers, to help people of diverse opinions come together and find peace with one another. We must always let go of our fear. That way, we will acknowledge that Jesus and we can trust Jesus, that we will acknowledge us that he will acknowledge us when that day comes. We are loved. We are valued. We have been greatly blessed. When I was first ordained many years ago and went to my first church, I encountered people who were young adults during the time of the Great Depression in the 1930s. I was very interested in hearing their stories. One woman in my congregation was very much willing to tell her stories. She remembered that she lived on a block of about 8 houses. She said that hardly anybody had much steady work. Nobody had any money. She said she and her husband went 3 years without ever making a mortgage payment. Fortunately, the bank didn't want their house either, so they let them slide. But she said, we looked in on each other. We took care of one another. Neighbors were always in communication. We looked out for each other. She said on occasions, we would gather on a Saturday night in somebody's home. Everybody brought a little food. There was always plenty to eat. After we had our potluck, we put the babies down on the sofa, and we would play card games or board games, and sometimes we even pushed the furniture back and rolled up the carpet and danced. We had so much fun. She said there were some people who thought it was the final hour. We are doomed. We are going to spiral down forever in this depression. But she said, as I look back on it, I tend to think it was our finest hour because we learned what it was like to be neighborly. So St. Philip's Episcopal Church, I leave you with this. When this time of transition and discernment is over, I hope that we can look back and say this might have been our finest hour because we learned